What up, Shannon?
uh, Nothing. What up with you?
Oh, just celebrating all the laborers in the history of the world today.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah, same. How did you celebrate today?
I I really didn't do much of anything, like a real quick water distribution, and I tried to get work done at a brewery, and then I took a way too long of a nap. How about you?
I got my hair cut, went grocery shopping, finished a book, watched a program, took a nap.
That
And
sounds
now
amazing.
I'm doing this.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm glad we don't have Flo and Skylar here because let's just make this short. Otherwise, this would go on for way too long. But in light of Labor Day, we're not going to be recording a full episode day, but we are going to be unlocking an episode from April of this year on the confluence of labor and climate change with special guest Aaron Ziemer from the Sunrise Movement. It's been a while for me. You checked this one out today, didn't you?
I did, because we talked about unlocking this episode and I was like, I don't remember. I'm actually really bad at this. I'm really bad at remembering what shows we've done, what we talk about on those shows. I fully had to go back and re-listen. So I listened to the first 15 minutes or so. And you know what? Perfect takes.
Great episode.
A really good episode.
Aaron was fantastic. I'm excited about this. I'm kind of surprised it was behind the Patreon paywall. So everyone listening, as we mentioned, we record on Mondays, so that would be Labor Day for us. So we decided not to today. But also given the circumstances of climate change, these 4.5 months later, we've got the Dixie Fire that is now over 910,000 acres. We have the Caldor fire and others nearby there evacuating our friends and family regularly right now, right? Auburn just had to evacuate some folks.
Right.
On top of that, Hurricane Ida going through New Orleans and then the rest of the U.S. All the way up to the Northeast. And then, we've seen floods in Tennessee that were very deadly. All of this is to say, this is an evergreen topic, unfortunately, and it will always be one. So I think it's really important and good that we can have this one with Aaron, even if the intro is great. I forgot we were out there with the intros around that time. We were going hard.
Yeah, we came back around. We brought him back down, but we were definitely we said some things.
There's some wild ones. You said some things in particular on this one.
It's fine. Maybe I said some things. Anyone who knows me has never said about me that I have spick and span language.
Mm-hmm. That's why we love you.
Thank you.
Of course. Anything else we want to say about this episode?
No, I'm excited that it's out there for folks to listen to it, and let us know what you think. We like to hear from you every once in a while.
Absolutely. And do keep in mind, folks, that this was recorded in April, but it's the same conversation. We're discussing the recall election, how that might affect Gavin Newsom's behavior. We're discussing, of course, the fires out here. We're discussing, the behaviors of some labor groups that have sort of formed these unholy relationships with the interests of capital. It's an interesting episode. I think Aaron is fantastic and extremely nuanced. So shall we just get it rolling?
Yeah.
All right. Until Friday, patrons. And if you're not a patron yet, maybe today's a good time for you to become one. Just listen to this one. This is the kind of stuff you're getting. It's amazing.
Could have had this in April.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
So good.
Why wait? Anyway,
Shouldn't.
we'll see you all on Friday. And if you're not a patron, bummer for you. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Ooh, sick burn.
Wow.
Sick burn.
No, literally. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Just before we started the show tonight, Shannon, you mentioned to me that it's been 2 weeks now since you had the second shot, which means that your Flo's not on this one. So there's nobody really to correct me when I say that you basically can't get sick with anything anymore. And
Ever.
You're going to live forever.
I believe that your bones will no longer break. Your organs, will not fail for any reason whatsoever.
Correct.
How did you celebrate today, Shannon? Tell us.
Yeah, I've been really excited about this day. I've been thinking about it since 14 days ago and just dreaming about how I might spend the 2-week marker where I'm fully vaccinated and also, immortal.
Mm-hmm.
How I would celebrate it. And I really just wanted to get to work, and so I wanted to celebrate by just like kissing everyone on the mouth all day long. So I was doing a lot of kissing everyone on the mouth, but just like, because I want to just, keep myself working, I was also doing like hand jobs and blow jobs and rim jobs.
Oh God.
Just like all day.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I mean, this is good though, because normally those activities come with a fair amount of risk that you are no longer like worried about because you've been vaccinated for 2 weeks now.
I thought we were cleaning up this intro and oh no.
You thought wrong.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Look at Shannon's losing her mind.
I thought it was like, I'm gonna go to my favorite deli or something.
I mean, in a way.
I didn't do shit. I went to work. Like actual work.
Just went to town.
I for one am enjoying the trend of these intros just becoming increasingly more profane and less mature as we go. I think it's really great.
It's devolving, and I just like the idea of like state electeds who see their name on our show notes and they have to have a staffer listen to these episodes, and this is the first thing they hear.
Yeah, they have to get the Patreon sub so that they can hear the real.
I'm going to just this entire episode think about Kempa's face when he realized that the idea to dream about a 2-week marker of being fully vaccinated was not this opener
deli.
actually just like isn't what he thought it was.
Yep. I mean, I've made similar jokes about the after times in the past, right? Like we're gonna have the great Sacramento suck and fuck, but just didn't expect it. Shannon, you really delivered that well.
Yeah, Shannon, you nailed it.
Would have been cool if I could have, not spit all over my desk and microphone and because I was holding it in.
How about we just talk about the news of the day?
You mean the other news of the day?
Yeah, beyond Shannon's breaking.
breaking.
Yeah, all right, that's a good idea. Let's do the show.
All right.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And you have Skylar.
And Shannon.
We do not have Dr. Flo today. She is out. I don't know what she's doing. Probably police funding stuff. So we'll see you on the other side, Dr. Flo.
Well, how many weeks has it been since she had the second shot?
That's a good question. I don't know if she has
Because
yet.
at least, I mean, Shannon had a day, but at least she made it to the show.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
mean, all right, Flo. You know what I mean?
You're up. Okay.
Your turn.
All right. But we do have a very, very special guest today, Aaron Ziemer with the Sunrise Movement. Aaron, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for inviting me to come chat with y'all.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was telling you this earlier. You are our third Sunrise guest on the show that since we've restarted this. So we love everything you all do. I really love how it just seems like you have an unending run of media trained representatives in Sac Sunrise because
Moise does a good job with that.
yeah, I love it. So yeah, it's exciting to have you on.
My favorite thing about having the Sunrise people on is when they come on and tell us that we're too old to be in the movement and make us feel bad.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
always
we're
my
2
favorite.
for 2 on that. I'm sure we're at the start of this thing, but I'm sure that at some point Aaron is going to bring that up. And
Yeah.
I'm going to feel super old and bad.
We'll have to make our sunset movement joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
that is
We
now
got
the
a- we got a
tradition
whole
when we
bit.
have the Sunrise Movement
Yeah.
people on.
When really we're kind of the elder millennials are more like midday movement, you know,
Yeah.
like brunch movement.
The elder millennials.
Yeah.
I'm not part of the brunch movement, man. Don't drag me into that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to workshop that one. So.
I know.
Spitballing here. So, okay, yeah. So the day that we're recording is on Thursday, April 22nd. That happens to be Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Hey.
I visited my favorite tree today, actually, so I'm very happy about that.
You and that tree,
Yeah, the purple peach. And yeah, so we wanted to do a discussion on climate, in particular, as climate policy is advocated for and as it is applied and as it is legislated here in California. And, you know, we've seen over the years that the Sunrise Movement has really gained a lot of clout, as well as I think there's been a lot of strategic sort of coalescing with different groups on the left. And that's just really exciting to see. So, Aaron, we might touch on a number of these different things. But first of all, I mean, for the guests or for the listeners who might not know, can you tell us what Sunrise Movement is and what it is that Sunrise Sacramento does?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, at least to me, at the core, Sunrise Movement is about the idea that fighting to stop climate change doesn't mean we have to live worse, more scarce lives, but that we can fight climate change in a way that, as a lot of Sunrise people say, you know, passes a Green New Deal and creates millions of good union jobs in the process. And what, for me, that means is that fighting climate change is like an opportunity actually to address all the other crises that already plague our society, all the other kinds of violence and suffering that is around us all the time. You know, whether that means building green, beautiful public housing for our neighbors so they have somewhere to stay, whether that means, as like Jamal Bowman is advocating for in New York, doing a green retrofit of schools, or schools that already need so much funding. Why not make them zero carbon and beautiful and well-funded at the same time? So that's kind of how I think about the core of what the Sunrise Movement is.
Great. You mentioned to me that you have sort of a labor background. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then also how you personally ended up in the Sunrise Movement?
Yeah, definitely. I actually got involved in labor organizing in a funny way, just because I was working at a hotel at a front desk job over one summer, and I kind of, at that time, I'd actually just gotten involved with like Sunrise and climate stuff. For a long time, I found it hard to care about climate things because on some level I knew it mattered, but it was really all about like the polar bears and these kind of really abstract things. And I found it really hard to care about polar bears when like my friend couldn't afford insulin or whatever, you know what I mean? It just felt very far away.
Right.
And so I think Sunrise was really huge for me in connecting climate change to like our day-to-day lives and the people immediately around us, and not just like parts per million in some abstract way. But anyway, so I was getting involved in climate stuff and just working this front desk job, and I ended up they tried to organize a union there with the hospitality union, Unite Here. And so I started working with some Unite Here organizers, and I was just like blown away by the quality and like the depth of the organizing that union organizers in particular seem to have. I mean, I guess if you think about it, you know, when a union starts organizing at a workplace, they just get a group of a random set of 200 people, and they have to help those 200 people not just get even a bare majority of those random 200 people to be down with the union. They need like a super majority of those people, 80+%, who are willing to go on strike and risk their job. And they don't get to pick who those people are in a way that I think you sometimes get to do if you're doing sort of electoral work, but other like broader activist work. You know what I mean? You just get these random 200 people, all they share is that they work here, and we got to get them all working together. So I think I was just impressed by the quality of the organizing, and I really wanted to learn from them. So that's kind of how I got involved.
Yeah, honestly, as someone who has spent years working at a non-union hotel, I can testify to the fact that that is a real battle. And for people to take that up and succeed at it is mind-bogglingly impressive.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lead into where we're going with the first topic today, because forming a union is around one similar thing, right? Like they all happen to work at the same place. Then there's this whole pool, this whole hodgepodge of ideology of everyone who works there, and they're not going to agree on everything, and things can get complicated. So when we move into the realm of politics, we see unions saying, vote yes on this thing, no on this, support this person, don't support that person. But that can be a really challenging, complex effort in that regard. Is this making sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I think that definitely makes sense.
Okay. So not all unions are the same. Well, also it's extremely difficult to organize a union. And so just as you were saying, the sheer willpower that it takes to pull these 200 folks together, your organizer is not going to have other political issues in their mind as they're trying to organize folks. It's just around like this one central thing that is a Sisyphean effort in some senses. Like obviously you want to succeed and finish it, but it's difficult, right? So let's talk a little bit about the confluence of labor and a particular issue like something like climate change and climate science. Where and how does that start to get sticky?
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the things that's obviously, I think, on a lot of people's minds right now is this SB 467 bill, right? Which was this bill that was recently killed in committee that would, I think, institute a total fracking ban. That's correct, right? That's your all understanding of it?
Yeah, so it would have done a number of things. Yeah, the fracking ban was a big part. There was, let me read it real quick, what it is. Okay, it would have ended fracking. It would have established 2,500 foot setbacks between oil wells and people's homes. Yeah. Our Councilmember Valenzuela has fought for things like this in the past on a state level.
Also, this is a thing that like doesn't like Texas has this, right? Like other states that are like far less progressive, or I guess in reputation than California, have already done this stuff.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It would have ensured a managed decline of California's oil industry. These are the words of R.L. Miller, the climate hawk. She used to run the, I believe, the climate caucus, or I'm not sure if that's what it's called, of the Democratic Party. It appears she might be stepping down now. And it would have created a just transition fund for workers displaced by that decline. So if you are losing your job or becoming, employed, they have things in place, or it would have had things in place that would have made sure that you still are going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in some ways, like an incredibly ambitious bill, and also like you were saying, Skylar, like I think about a lot of this exists elsewhere, and a lot of these are things that, you know, Newsom has been promising to stop new fracking since the day he stepped into office. I'm pretty sure. I mean, this
Well,
is
he
a project that
campaigned
used
on
to
it
be
before
called.
he was in office, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this whole project used to be called Brown's Last Chance because it was about trying to get Jerry Brown to stop new fracking before he, you know, stepped out. And so yeah, in some ways a very like a long project and also incredibly ambitious, but has come up with this thing where, you know, as often happens in these kinds of things, there's pretty strong opposition from the building trades in particular, particularly representing people who work in the fossil fuel industry. And yeah, I think this is really complicated because it involves, you know, the building trades in some ways have an obligation like any other union to represent their members' best interests. And as they see politics right now, this is how they see their members' best interests. I think that's wrong in a couple of ways, but I also think the climate movement has helped make that the situation where that's how the building trades see their best interests. So I think there's maybe something to talk there, but I don't know where you all want to kind of get started thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a great question, because you just that seems like a very interesting place to go down. Can you speak to that a little bit? Sort of what can be done? You know, R.L. Miller in this piece she wrote in the Bee, she talks about this sort of unholy alliance that has formed between the building trades and big oil. What should the strategy be moving forward for those of us who want to live in a livable world at 80, when we also want to support labor?
Yeah, I think there's like we have to put a couple things in our head at the same time. I think one is that sometimes people think that like white men in hard hats are the only union workers, and so they'll treat the building trades as if they're the only union. And I think that's not true. Obviously, I mean, one of the things I'm pretty sure that the California Nurses Association actually endorsed this bill, as I would not be surprised if they did. And I think we have to remember that there are a lot of other union workers, and it might ultimately turn out that we're not able to get the like active, enthusiastic support of the people some of the people whose lives are going to be most clearly and immediately impacted by moving away from fossil fuels. That might be true. But we also know the building trades are this incredibly powerful group of organized workers. And I think we should try to organize them into our coalition, because I think we share a lot of interests, and it should be possible to organize this group of workers who build all sorts of things and do all sorts of energy work in a world where we need to build a huge number of different kinds of things and kind of massively retrofit our infrastructure. So it should be possible. We at least need to give it a good shot. And I think, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things here. Maybe we'll just start with one. Is I think one place the environmental movement often makes a mistake is that we have to remember that we're talking about real existing good jobs that people have. And in return, we're promising sort of hypothetical jobs where we haven't even made clear how we're going to make those union jobs. You know what I mean? And so we're asking someone to put a lot of trust in us. And I don't think we've necessarily built the relationships or the solidarity for someone who works a six-figure fossil fuel job to say, well, look, we've got some oil and we've got some incentives that if you lose this job, we're giving companies incentives to rehire oil and gas industry workers. Like, I don't know why I would believe that's actually going to happen, you know, if I have this real existing job right now. So I think
wouldn't part of that bill that
there...
died, right, was the last part of it was it would have created a fund to help to kind of like create a little bit of a framework for workers who are moving from the oil industry into green industries, right?
Yeah, my understanding is that specifically that fund was in the form of incentives for companies who would rehire oil and gas industry workers. I could be wrong, but from what I heard, a lot of frustration was like, that's kind of weak. Like to be like, here's your good union job. We're going to incentivize companies to give you another job that no one's promising is going to be anywhere near as good or union, you know.
Right. So as you're saying,
I could be wrong.
Why
though.
should, yeah, but as you're saying, like, why should I trust you to take this leap over this crevice, like that I will actually land on solid ground when I have this safety net over on this side already?
Yeah, and we just don't have the history for it. I think it'd be one thing if the environmental movement had a long history of working with the trades and other unions, and we had projects that we could point to and say, look, these people worked at this plant, and then we fought together and we got this, solar install job, but it was union and we had the retraining, but we just don't have that history. And so I just think that we don't have that trust or the relationships for that trust, you know?
Okay, yeah. So what I'm hearing is some of the steps forward are building a rapport, building a relationship with these trades, and also creating a couple of proofs of concept that, like, you can point to that say, look, these people did take this leap and they have fantastic jobs, in the green energy industry or wherever.
Yeah, and I think it's not even like, it doesn't even have to be that deep. Like, I don't know, I wasn't involved in the drafting of this bill. I wasn't involved in the coalition forming, but I have questions which were like, when they were drafting this legislation, did they reach out to the building trades and say, hey, what would it take for you to support this? Like, what would you need? Because if the worst thing we have to do is like give some people who have some really good jobs, spend a little bit of money to give them some more good jobs to like get climate legislation passed, that's all right with me. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal, and I think about like in Sacramento, actually, there's some kind of electrification stuff that's going around right now, thinking about new buildings being electrified. And originally the pipe fitters union was opposed to it because they do natural gas. And they said this will probably cut about 15 to 25% of our jobs. And that's a lot of our jobs, right? But even pretty late in the process, 350 and some other folks who are doing electrification, some Sunrise folks, just like literally called the pipe fitters union and was like, hey, let's talk. And we talked and we got to a point where they said, look, if we can do gray water installs that make houses more water efficient and that replaces some of our jobs, that's good with us. Climate change is going to happen. We have to get rid of natural gas, or we have to get rid of natural gas to stop climate change. It's going to happen eventually. We just want to make sure we can get as much out of it for our members as we can. And like, that was pretty late in the game and not even an ideal situation. And it worked out pretty well so far. So sometimes it's just like, talking to people, having those conversations, not assuming they're going to be opposed to something.
Yeah. Well, and I guess good on all of you for taking that step and reaching out to folks. I guess weirdly that doesn't happen as often as we'd like it to.
I was going to say, can I ask about something real quick? Because I think a thing that we haven't really addressed, and I don't know very much about this, and I'm hoping, Aaron, that you can kind of fill me in a little bit. But another one of like kind of the major problems that we're having, like another one of the things that was sort of a death knell for this bill and these sorts of movements in general. In this piece, Dave, that Dave was talking about earlier by Miller, she refers to an alliance made between the building trades and the oil industry that I guess was like somehow bolstered or solidified or strengthened in 2019. Do you have any more details around that? And I mean, isn't that also like a gigantic problem, that kind of a gigantic obstacle to like making any changes around getting away from the oil industry?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that kind of 2019 specific thing, but when I think about the situation in general, it's like pretty bleak when you think about it from the union side, because this is essentially the union allying with their bosses, the people they are supposed to be organizing and building power against, because they seem to think it's the best way to defend this like little share of jobs, or pretty substantial share of jobs, but these like set of jobs, right? So I don't know too much about that specific moment in time, but I think the fact this alliance exists means that essentially like the oil and gas industry's out-organized us. They've convinced the union that negotiates against them that their interests lie with them and not with forming alliances with other movements. And I think that's not all on us. The oil and gas industry is incredibly powerful, but I think that presents an organizing challenge for us, where we have to figure out how can we build the solidarity to change how they're reading the situation? Because I think we do have something better to offer than organizing with the bosses.
Yeah, the formal organizing or the formal sort of marriage of the two, this was called California Common Ground, right? This, and again, as Skylar was saying, powerful building trades unions, marriage with them in the oil industry. And you might say, you know, how much impact could that have, right? But I think to Aaron's point, that sort of organizing between two folks who really don't have common interests, it has succeeded in turning this state from the place where we took bold climate action for years that other states would not, to something where we see left and right very important and like a lot of it reasonable legislation being shot down. Let's look at the last few years. Assembly Bill 3030, which would have conserved 30% of California's wild places by 2030, failed to pass. That's a reasonable bill. Senate Bill 54 to end single-use plastics, killed. Actually, that's returning this year, so let's see what we can do there. There were a dozen 2020 housing bills that were aimed to densify cities, all failed to pass. Bills to ban gasoline-powered cars by 2040 couldn't even get hearings. AB 525 to promote offshore wind power pulled for lack of committee votes. I mean, it's now a proven pattern that these things are not being passed in our legislature. And again, and you know, I guess we do sound a little bit like broken records, but we have to say it every time that we have a super duper majority of Democrats in this state. You only need 2/3 to have a super majority in either piece of the legislature. We have 75% of senators are Democrats, 75% of assembly members are Democrats. Every single statewide elected position in this state is a Democrat. There is no excuse other than Democrats are not or at least Democratic leadership are not the climate angels that we all, you know, that so many people would have us think they are, right? So in this piece by R.L. Miller, she has her receipts, you know. As you all were saying earlier, Newsom has repeatedly said he wants to ban fracking, and he shut up. And a lot of people are thinking like, oh, interesting that he shuts up about this when he's got a recall coming out against him, you know. Then we have Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins. We have Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon. These are two Democrats that like the people who like work in the legislature love to harp on how wildly progressive these two are, but they consistently fail the people of California. You know, they can use their political clout to pass any of these bills we just mentioned. And then can we just bring it to Rusty Hicks for a second here? Rusty Hicks is the chair of the California Democratic Party. He is running for re-election this year against Delane Easton, who is, I believe she's much more climate oriented. But a young delegate was not sure if they wanted to vote for Hicks in this election or not, in his re-election campaign. And so Hicks called this young delegate up and, you know, was sort of trying to gauge where they were on this and kind of what he could do to get their vote. And they basically straight up said, I asked why he'd accepted. This is Jacob Ben Dixon, and I'm reading from his Twitter profile. I asked why he'd accepted more than $330,000 in fossil fuel money, despite pledging not to do so. He answered that it was a campaign pledge, not a governing pledge. An absurd distinction, if you ask me. That's beyond absurd. That's fucked up.
I love that, man. I love it when they do that. That reminds me when they asked Kamala Harris about like, hey, you know all that stuff you said about Joe Biden in the debate, like where are you at with that now? And she's like, it was a debate.
Right.
Goodbye.
Okay, so let me keep reading. He told me, so Rusty Hicks told me that the party needed the money and that he was, so they need the money. So, the party it's in their platform. It is in their platform to not take money from these fossil fuel industries. And then their leadership, the head of the California Democratic Party, takes $350,000 from these monsters.
Yeah.
It's so.
I think it rules, honestly. I'm
they were just down a couple bucks. They were just trying to make the budget. Can you blame them?
Like, what are you using that for?
Yeah.
He told me the party needed money and that he was working on expanding small dollar donations. So, okay, well, I got to shore that up. Well, we're working on the small dollar donations. There's a trust issue when you're taking big oil money that small dollar people will not want to give to you.
Look, it's either Rusty Hicks or you love Trump, Dave.
Yeah. Blue no matter who, baby. So small dollar donations to someday move away from dirty money. I told him
someday.
This is Jacob speaking. I told him the party could stop being two-faced. Thank you, Jacob. Supporting climate policy while taking fossil fuel money. He said he was working on this as fast as possible, and I told him that it wasn't fast enough, that I wanted a world that I could live in when I was 80. Here's the kicker. Here's the good part. Do this. Rusty Hicks responds to Jacob. I bet you'll enjoy the lights on in your apartment and the gas in your car along the way. Just what?
That's big di-fi energy. I like that.
Totally di-fi energy.
Truly. Or just a Republican talking point, but a little bit. What's the difference, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, and sorry if I went on along a little bit there, but my question for Aaron is, I just have the deepest respect for Sunrise folks and the fights you're doing because of these moments like this Rusty Hicks moment where I feel like you deal with a lot of condescension from these folks and you keep pressing on. Is that an accurate description, and sort of how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing you're getting at is that like really the place we should be training our anger here is not at the building trades union because I mean, like I said, I have criticisms of them, absolutely, but it's at the Democrats that are using them as a smokescreen to not pass this legislation. When my question is for all these Democrats is, what other labor legislation have they supported this cycle? Did they support the Fast Recovery Act, which is backed by SAU 10-1, that would give fast food workers statewide bargaining rights? Newsom, who, as we've already talked about, literally this summer in the middle of the pandemic, refused to sign a recall rights bill that would allow hotel workers, give them the right to their jobs back when the pandemic eased up and those jobs came back. He refused to sign it. And so it's like, there's just something so disingenuous and malicious about pretending that they're doing it because they care about working people, because they care about labor, when they're just doing it because they've essentially, the oil company has positioned the building trades into a place where they're saying, we want to use you as a smokescreen for Democrats to be able to act for corporate interests, and in return, we'll protect your jobs. Like, that's actually the situation. And yeah, so I just think, kind of as you've been saying, it's really, we should be focusing our anger on these elected officials who are saying one thing and just absolutely doing the other.
It sounds like there's, and tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong, but there's not a whole ton of daylight in between California elected Democrats and elected Republicans kind of nationwide. No?
On issues like this, the Democrats aren't like overtly saying fascist things, but they're doing some pretty terrible.
I feel like this is almost more insidious. Like, at least the Republicans are like honest about what they're doing. Like, they'll just come out and be like, yeah, we're evil, we're doing evil stuff. The Democrats are like, yeah, we're doing evil stuff, but for good. We're for good though. Like we're good.
Well, the Democrat, yeah. And well, it's all the same dynamic. And if you view it through the class lens, it makes so much more sense, right? I mean, it's both parties are doing the bidding of an oligarchic class that funds all of their campaigns. And that's kind of what our struggle is, right? To break free from that, to find ways to put cracks in the system that has just run roughshod on the working people of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Okay, I didn't know if anyone wanted to take that anywhere else. Yeah, and like that's just, it's constantly the challenge. And Aaron, I'm glad you brought it back around to that. You know, we did spend a lot of time on these the trades, right, and the unions there. It is also important to keep our eyes on the prize, and with folks like them, I think it's interesting, and I think that you have a very good point that I think there's an education and a relationship building, and you know, there are a lot of things that can be done as far as building rapport, finding a common goal with fellow workers in those spaces, and then, you know, retraining our sights on these legislators where it doesn't matter if they have a D next to their name, they know who butters their bread, and they're going to do what they're going to do based off of that.
Yeah, and it can be really concrete too. It's like it's solidarity, and what that means is like the climate movement showing up to someone's picket line because they have an unsafe construction site, even though no one asked them to be there or promised anything in response, but just because that's what solidarity means. You know, I think it's that kind of thing, building that kind of trust. Or like in, you know, just recently, the United Mine Workers, a coal workers union, said they would fully support climate bills, Joe Biden's climate legislation, if they had real credible promises of good union, green jobs. And that's like the biggest coal workers union in the country. Or just one other really clear example, I think, is in New York. Actually, they passed this huge kind of baby Green New Deal climate legislation. And it was because a bunch of unions and climate groups got together and said, you know, look, what are the 95% of the things we agree on is building more green infrastructure. And you eventually do have to get to the things that there's disagreement on. You have to stop fracking. You cannot keep fracking. But first they said, let's build this trust. Let's build massive solar fields together. And then we can talk about this other thing that creates, there's more opportunities for oil companies and other people to try to split us apart here, you know, so.
I feel like you Sunrise folks have put a lot of thought into this.
I think like to kind of segue a little bit here, I think like kind of to go back, Aaron, to what you were saying earlier about how like, I think for a lot of us years and years and years ago, climate change did feel more abstract, and it was like, oh, polar bears won't have anywhere to live. And it was sort of a thing where it was like, oh, well, okay, I mean, I'm sad about that, but whatever. And it's less abstract now, and it's more kind of right up in our faces. And it, I think, is like especially frustrating to have a governing system that doesn't seem to be taking climate change seriously when we live in a state now that catches on fire every year for like 2 months, and we all choke on smoke, which is sort of, I think, a thing for a lot of people, you know, where they're like kind of like, okay, well, like here it is, like this, in addition to like, you know, increased hurricanes all over the place, like a million other weather abnormalities that are now normal.
The new abnormal, right? This is
right, exactly. Yeah. Like those things are kind of now normal. Like it is, like it seems like it would be, if anything, an easier time to lean on somebody like Newsom to support things that help the climate when, like, I mean, the whole state lights on fire now. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's a similar thing to people who are still resisting Medicare for all in the face of a pandemic, where it's like, how much more obvious does it need to be that like this is a serious thing that we need to be taking seriously?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. This week, Governor Newsom took a visit to Lake Mendocino out in Ukiah, right? And he stood on this like dry, cracked lake bed and said, I'm standing currently 40 feet underwater, or should be standing 40 feet underwater, right? And so he's trying to drive home the fact that, these lakes are dams, our water supply is historically low at this moment at the end of the rainy season. So obviously he calls a state of emergency in Sonoma and Marin counties, where it's sort of the worst of the worst here as far as our water supply goes. He's doing all of this, as Skylar was saying, as we know, like, doesn't he?
I think it's Mendocino County, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mendocino County. Ukiah is Mendocino County. Thank you. I wrote that down. So all of that, he's doing all of this out there while, as you very eloquently put it, our state is constantly on fire. I can't believe that this is normal for us now, just masks all the time. And he's doing all of this, but he refuses, as does every other legislator who stands on his side on these issues, to face head on the determinants of this reality, the determinants that created the scenario where we do have constant droughts, where we do have constant fires. And I don't know where we take this conversation, but it's giving platitudes effectively, passing legislation on how can we stop a fire when it's happening. It's like, no, let's try and be proactive here.
Yeah, I think Newsom tweeting climate change is real, right? And then signing a dozen fracking permits.
Right.
Precisely.
I think another thing too that stands out for this is that obviously one of the reasons why he doesn't want to just declare a statewide drought is because then we have to start asking people not to water their lawns, and there's a bunch of things, and it inconveniences people, and he's already extremely unpopular across the board in the state and facing a recall, right? So he doesn't want to ask anybody for anything, even if it's something the state needs. The other side of that, though, is that if you are gonna if you're gonna do all this stuff, if or not do any of the stuff that you need to be doing, right, it is kind of bullshit to be hey, everybody, don't water your lawns, right? Because that's while that is a help in a drought, it doesn't even come close to serious, really serious things that we would need to change to actually combat a drought in a real way, right?
Yeah, me not putting my AC on a triple digit day, it's well, maybe that's not the thing we should be focusing on. I think there are larger systemic issues. Yeah. Aaron, can we talk to you about sort of how do we look forward on something like this? What is Sunrise focused on? And what are some of the answers there? How can we activate folks?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's about bringing things home to people in their lives. We've been talking about the fires. It's talking about what this means for people's day-to-day lives. It's the fact that my dad now just owns a generator because he assumes PG&E is going to turn his power off 4 to 5 days a year, and he lost $600 in groceries last year. He can't afford to do that again. You know what I mean? It's just trying to tie those really things that are close to people's lives to these bigger, more abstract things, which, to like bring it back to the union organizing conversation, is like fundamentally what union organizing is about, right? It's about saying like, what is your life like now? And then trying to lead people and through questions and asking them hard questions about helping them understand why it is that way. So I think it's that. I think it's solidarity. Fundamentally, it's about trying to knit together all our disparate set of movements into like a real left that can act as a left and be powerful. And I think that's one of the things that I find most exciting about Sacramento right now, is it feels like we're in the middle of a moment where that feels like it's happening. It feels like we have a left in Sacramento. We don't just have like a housing justice group and a environmental justice group, and it's something like that. It's like starting to knit together.
Black liberation.
At least in the Black liberation group, exactly. Yeah.
We're seeing folks show up for each other, and I just want to knock on wood every time I talk about it, because I'm just, it's exciting and I'm cautiously optimistic, and it's exactly the kind of people power that can really move mountains, I think, in a place like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the fact that in 2022, we have the opportunity to have a governing coalition on student city council of leftist city councilors, like not just be in, one or two people shouting from the minority, but we could have a governing coalition. And like, what would that mean for working people in the city? So, yeah.
Yeah. So the activation, there's not like a particular thing we're focused on at the moment. It's sort of looking forward to, like, is there like, are there climate objectives that you're trying to, that you want folks to get to know about right now, to call a politician about, anything like that?
I think right now, Sunrise is kind of in a moment, like you said, where we're like potentially building for this 2022 moment. I think on the national level, Sunrise is really focused on this Good Jobs for All program, which is again trying to bring together this idea of a jobs guarantee and all the work we need to do from infrastructure, but also all the other work our communities need. We need all this care work, and there's a whole other conversation about how like climate jobs aren't just green solar jobs, they're also people doing low carbon work, like taking care of our elderly and sick and people who need it, because that is just as much low carbon work as installing a Tesla battery is or whatever. So yeah, I think on the national level, it's a green jobs guarantee is really like the fight. And then I think on the local level, it's trying to figure out, build power for 2022 and think about like what would a Green New Deal mean for Sacramento as we move towards potentially having the ability to implement something that is to actually implement something like that,
Yeah. I can't say enough about Sunrise Sacramento. I know Sacramento 350 as well, right? They are just wonderful advocates for mitigating climate change. I think that you have an ally, at least in Sacramento City Council right now, right? At least one ally in Katie Valenzuela. She has long been working at the state level in climate advocacy, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Just a total champion, and also someone who's willing to fight for real solutions to climate change rather than just having people say, oh, let's, change the light bulbs or, little things around the edges, right. But getting to the center of what we need to do. And also a champion for making sure no one gets left behind in the process, which I think is the only way you build real power. If you don't make people feel like they're going to lose,
Right. And this stuff, it is like, it's a class issue, it's a race issue, and people are hurting today. Last year, the buffer zone conversation, right? When that bill was up for discussion, I don't know if you all remember, this is speaking back to the condescension I mentioned earlier that younger folks get from these folks who, get all their campaign money from the oligarchs. Councilmember Valenzuela, before she was a council member, went up and spoke for a buffer zone, speaking from personal experience, speaking about her own, adverse health effects, and speaking like kind of from the heart on something that is harming so many people in the state. And I don't know if you all remember this, but Hertzfeld, is he a senator? Senator Hertzfeld went up and called her out by name, which you just don't do in a situation like that, and just screamed at her and berated her. And like I just think that I think that speaks exactly to what it is that the Sunrises and the SAC 350s have to deal with on a daily basis. Katie is a respected person, and she is now an elected official, and she still gets that sort of treatment, that sort of behavior from these folks.
Yeah, just absolutely appalling, ghoulish behavior.
People like to act like it, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people have the approach, or when they hear about issues like this, and there are, like, obviously some of it does get fairly complex, but at the root of it, when it's like, oh, why don't the people who represent us just do the right thing? People are like, well, it's not that simple. And in a lot of these situations, it's like, no, it is that simple. Like, you took a bunch of money from this lobby, and so now you're going to do what they say. It's not complex. Like, that's how that works. All politics is, when you distill it down, is just a scramble for resources. And something like the oil industry has a ton of resources, right? And in our country, where the whole system works on bribery, like, of course that's how it works. And it's not, I don't know, like when people are
Skylar,
like, oh, like,
I took a campaign pledge, not a governing pledge. All right.
right. But it's not complicated. It's like, yeah, no, you took their money and now you're going to do what they say. Like, it's simple.
And they love to say the same thing about, like, transitioning to green energy. They're like, oh, it's too complicated, we have to slow down. And you can acknowledge that it's complicated to, like, change out the core way that we produce energy for our society. Obviously that's complicated, but the way to deal with that is not to slow down. It's to know it's going to take twice as long as you think it's going to. So you need to go now and throw as many resources as you can at it, because it is going to be complicated. And that means we need more time to make sure we do it right, and the resources to do it right. So yeah, absolutely.
Aaron, I'm just so glad to have you on today. I've been very effusive all episode about the Sunrise Movement and everything you all do. Can I just open it up to you and say, is there something that we might not have discussed that you would like to touch on?
It's a good question. I think, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like we covered most of the things I was thinking about. You know what I mean? I think, like, my like closing thoughts on the whole thing would be that I don't just want to be on the right side. I want to win. And winning means organizing. And that means recognizing when we have powerful potential coalition partners, like the trades, like these other people, we have to figure out how to build bridges with them and bring them into our coalition, especially if the cost of that is just making sure some people who have good jobs now have some more good jobs in the future. And if that means we have to throw a couple extra million in the bill, like, that's fine. We'll find a way to pay for it. You know what I mean? All of our futures are on the line, and it's on the legislature to make that happen. And but I think it's also on us to take responsibility to build coalitions when we can and make our movement as big and powerful as it can be.
Yeah. And I guess that means just showing up for each other, like you were saying, right? So, you keep folks, you keep us updated on voices about when you need folks, and we'll use our platform to let people know. And I think the more folks show up for each other, it just feels like it's happening. It's all happening right now, and so I look forward to more from SAC, Sunrise, and yeah, I don't know. Anybody else?
Shannon, what do you think? You have been, really ever since we stopped talking about your exciting day.
Well, I just feel like
her day.
I've been doing a lot of reflecting about my day. But No, I mean, I like when we have a guest, I generally, I like to sit back and listen and learn, and there was so much content. So I think for me, what I do echo, and I think every time we've had Sunrise guest on, just like the striking and incredible work that you all do to organize and like to get the word out and really like work at the intersections of climate and everything else is I just think it's so powerful. And I think part of me sitting here and listening is just really thinking about all of those things just personally, and how that, how the organization, the organizing work of Sunrise can really even begin to work in like the three of us co-hosts that are here now, right? And like thinking about our lives and how like connecting all of this, all of the work that you all do to just our everyday is so important. And as you were talking about like a friend not being able to afford insulin, and like the intersection of that with climate work, and it's like I begin to think about people experiencing homelessness that I know, and like how climate and climate issues connect to that. And so anyway, that's both just a way to say like thank you, an affirmation of the work, and also an explanation for why I spent more time crunching on my lifesaver mints than bringing the questions. So
You call yourself a student of the show sometimes on episodes like this.
I do, yeah. I love episodes like this because I do really feel like a student of the show. And I did, in fact, bring my notebook and I took notes because I do. Yeah, I think anytime we have a guest, I learn. But I think the reality is that like I fall into the group of people that was like, the polar bear reference around climate change is one that makes so much sense to me. And like, yeah, it sucks that the polar bears are dying, but what does that have to do with me in a lot of ways? And that's not where I'm at now, but certainly I'm way too fucking far behind, way further behind than I should be. And it's because of the good work of folks like you, Aaron, and your comrades that I have found myself where I'm at in terms of my understanding of climate justice. So anyway.
Yeah.
That's it.
Aaron, why don't you tell us how folks who are just totally just agitated by this episode, how can we get their energy tied up in this winning movement?
I feel like, to me, the thing I always say is join an organization. I don't really care what it is, but join something that's doing political work. If you want to join Sunrise, if you Google Sunrise Movement SAC, you'll find their website. Sign an interest form. Someone will be in touch with you in a couple of days for a one-on-one conversation to get you involved. But like you can't do this by yourself. You can't do this on Twitter. You got to join an organization, and like that is the way you'll have the most profound and meaningful relationship to this work that will like change you and make you stronger than you probably thought you could be. And it's also the only way we actually win anything. So that's my general recommendation, is just join something, go to a meeting, join an organization.
I like that.
Yeah.
Guy, did you have any last thoughts?
No. Aaron, where can people find you personally around the internet if you care to share that information?
I have a Twitter, but it's only for reading other people's Twitters. So it's locked, and I've never posted except for once when I tried to ask someone a question, forgot it was locked, and then realized they couldn't see what I asked them because it was locked. So no, I don't really have much like that.
Fair.
But if you go on Instagram and Twitter and look up Sunrise Movement SAC, you'll find us. And Moyes and the communications team do a ton of great work with sunrise stuff and also just uplifting other movements. It's a great place to just see like what's going on in the area.
Yeah.
Thanks for, I know I joked about this at the beginning of the episode, but literally you are the only representative of the Sunrise Movement who's ever come on this show and not called us old. So I wanted to reach out and express my appreciation for that. I feel like a young spring chicken at the end of this episode.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yep.
Dave, where can I find you around the internet?
It's a good question. I'm on Twitter at Unokempa, YUKNOWKEMPA.
Shannon, where can I find you around the internet?
Well, hot dang, I'm at Shan N.D. Stevens.
Dave, where can I find Flo around the internet?
Flo is at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE on Twitter.
And Shannon, where can you find me around the internet?
Oh, you're at Guillotine. The number 4 YOU. That's
Hell
Guillotine.
yeah.
The number 4 YOU.
Where all of our Twitter handles are very much us personally.
All right. Well, if you are listening to this, thank you so much for supporting the show and the work we do. We appreciate you. We love you. And we want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me for now.
Just for now.
But apparently not from Shannon.
Shannon and I made out twice already today.
I'm getting to work.
All right.
Oh.
Bye.
Bye-bye.